So anyway, shortly after I crashed, and so I had to rebuild a lot of this. But again, we just have this gold, we have this cool emission, which I'm totally digging, by the way. We have this going to reflection weight and the inverse being the emission. Okay, so where to go from here? Well, I want to break up these values. So let's take a look at this inverted signal. Okay, this is what's going to emission, and I want to break up those values. So RS max on noise, and let's get ourselves a color layer. We'll use this as the base, and I want to multiply into the inverted signal. Now, as far as a noise, let's use a POXO. POXO is really high frequency. I think that'll work nicely. Heck, even another wavy turbulence might be nice, just at a different scale. So that's kind of where I'm thinking on that. Or, yeah, let's just do that. Actually, you know what? Second thoughts. Let's try an Ober. That kind of fits the theme a little bit. I don't know. We'll just play with it real quick. Ober. Okay. We have that. Multiply. Let's be sure that we're looking at the Ober real quick. We have that going on. Let's change the scale. It's a little bit too big to something maybe right around there. And if we can't get enough fine detail, then we should choose something else. Yeah, so let's try going back to that POXO. I think the POXO will actually be pretty nice. We'll do that. We'll clip our lows a little bit like that. And then we'll take our highs and go maybe right about there with that. Bring up the contrast a little bit. Also on the offset, we'll say $T like that. And then let's also go to the speed and set that to maybe a higher speed of like 2. So now we have this kind of thing going on. Also, let's maybe scale this up, maybe like 2 and 2, so that we have this. Kind of fits the theme, right? Let's now see what that gives us once we multiply into the inverted signal. This will now be our new emission channel. So I think that's pretty cool in general. I don't think we're really getting enough of the metal in there, though. I think we have too much emission in general. So let's go back up here and use a bias and gain. I'll do a bias, and actually we'll do a vector bias because we're working with vector data. That's the green lines. That's what that means. Okay, so yeah, let's just do one bias right there. That'll now go to reflection weight. And if we change this, we can kind of bias this in favor of the metal like that. And then let's also use a vector gain so that we can increase the contrast. So that again goes to reflection weight. We're looking at emission right here. Turn that up, and maybe we have something right around there. Okay, what happens when we go and do that? That's not as bad. Let's go take this bias down now, and we can start kind of blending in these areas really nicely. That's really cool. Also on that gain, if we turn that down, that'll give it some more intensity as well. So maybe something right around there looks pretty sweet. I really like that. Now on the color here of this emission, we can also do something to make it so it's not white. So let's make another noise right here. And this time we'll do something else. So maybe we'll do a Naki, or we could do something different. Maybe a blistered turbulence. Why not? Let's try that. Blistered turbulence. Plug that in. There we go. Need to go down here and change our clipping settings. Add some contrast. Maybe bring this down a little bit. And all we're trying to do here is we are trying to use color. So this again is the emission color. So we'll do maybe something like blue right there. We want to keep everything light toned for the most part. And then maybe go right around there and do something like that. And make this a bit more saturated. Okay. So I think that would work well. I did a gold just so that maybe it plays nicer with the gold colors underneath it. That's the thinking behind that. Okay, now that we have that, we can plug that into the layer mix. This will go to our surface, and we'll enable layer 2, and this time we'll just multiply. So now we have that going on. So again, this is our emission color right there. I think that's pretty cool. Now if we go back here, we end up with that. And I like it. I think it's really cool. Maybe on here we can turn down this multiply a little bit so it's not as intense. This is full blast, and we just want to kind of break up those values. Let's also add some more contrast to this. So we'll do something maybe right around there. And all I'm trying to do, again, is just break this up a little bit so it has just a tad more detail to it. So maybe right around there. If we go back to our emission, we can also try turning this up a little bit like that. And then going back and forth between that multiply and turning up the emission. So maybe a little bit more. And then again, up on the mask. There we go. I think that's really cool. That seems very magical-y, right? Let's turn off the streak real quick. Don't need that. Cool, I like that. Also, I like how round this sphere is. I'm not really digging the whole displacement that we had earlier. So what if we did this instead? What if, instead of displacement, we did a bump map? That'd be kind of fun. So let's try a bump map going from 0 to 1. And plug that into the bump. And we don't need displacement. This will render way faster anyway. Okay. So we end up with that. It's obviously pretty intense right now, but take that down, and we have a lot more subtlety in that, and I like it. That's really, really cool. All right, so let's dial in some of these settings. I think we have the general setup working correctly, but we just need to make a few tweaks to get all the right ideas across. Okay, so first of all, let's go down to these colors. I don't like the orange. That wasn't really working. Instead, I'm going to go more purple with that. So down on the saturation a little bit and go a little bit more towards blue, something right around there. I like that better. Also, I'm going to take this emission and bring that up so that we have something right around there. It's okay to clip the whites in this case. I think we want that high energy feeling. And so we're just going to try that out and see if that will work. Okay, we have that. Let's also go down here. I don't want this gold being that bright. I want to add more contrast to this visually. So let's just take this bright color and bring it down. Yeah, I like something kind of dark like that, and then the brightness shows up towards the highlights. That's really cool. Also, when it comes to the roughness, I don't know if I showed you this in the last lesson or not, but nothing complicated here. I just have this right here moving. That goes to roughness. I remap the values to 0.1 to 0.3. So pretty straightforward on that. Okay, so we have that going on. I think for the most part, we're there. I do want to actually turn back a little bit or turn down the amount of emission that's happening. So let's just go to our noise, I believe, and try, doing something maybe around there so that we end up getting about that much. Maybe actually go up a little bit more, and then we can just dial in the bias and gain. So I like that maybe, and then the gain, it's kind of like that fall off. Yeah, so something right about there. It's pretty cool. Okay, so that seems to be working out a little bit better already. Now, I think what's really going to sell this whole thing is some of these post effects. So as an example, I have a LUT right here. That adds a lot to the situation. I use this Ektachrome E100s. We can maybe get some streaks going on to give this a bit of a glowy feel. That always adds a lot. So bring up the threshold a little bit more right there. Bring that down. I like making this rather soft, but you don't want to go too crazy on that. So that'll give this a softer feel. It's still a little bit too much. So bring down that softness all the way. Yeah, that's better. For the bloom, I'm going to use this as a wide glow. So let's bring up the threshold like that. And then the softness will go right around there. Bring it down all the way and then up just a tad bit. We just want the light to kind of wrap around certain areas like that. And then also, if we introduce depth of field, I think that'll add another layer that's really cool as well. So maybe take our f-stop down to 0.1. Maybe try 0.5. 0.4. There we go. I think 0.4 might be pretty cool. And just by doing that, we just made a few tweaks. It's just about the same setup, but man, look at that. That's really cool. It's just this abstract, glowing looking orb thing. And all we did was we improvised along the way. So by now, I think you guys have a sense of how to do this. Let's actually do one more thing. Now that I had an idea that popped in my head, let's create a mountain here on the actual geometry. And I want to deform the geometry over time very subtly. Make this feel like it has extra energy in it or something like that. We'll maybe do a whirly or maybe a something like that. No, I kind of like the purlin actually. This might be a purlin moment. Let's go ahead and turn up the frequency here so we can see what's going on. And then we'll just take our octaves maybe down a little bit. Yeah, we'll do down. And then also the roughness is down, height at like 0.1. So we end up with just that very subtle movement happening right there in the sphere. I think that'll add a lot. So go back to our render view. There we go. Now we have that. It kind of just moves over time. I'm going to render this out. Let's see what the final result looks like. And there we have it. Now we have this kind of thing going on. It turned out really cool. And again, this is not something I planned out ahead of time. It just kind of started with one idea and I kept on improvising until something cool happened. Also, I adjusted the bump and I switched out the HDR from what you saw before, but it's pretty much all the same thing, the same network as what you just saw me make. Anyway, if you're following along and you're still awake, I know sometimes you can watch this stuff and it just kind of fries your brain. So if that's you, go ahead and take a break. I know that these live artistic demos are kind of difficult sometimes, but trust me, it's way more fun if you're in the driver's seat and you're making these decisions and you're improvising with your ideas. That's really the fun part. So if you're watching this and you want to really get comfortable with these noises and you want some practice, this is a fantastic exercise to go through. It would be a day well spent in just playing around with different ideas and seeing what you come up with. If you do come up with something interesting, let me know about it. I'd be happy to post it on social media. I think it's a fun thing to post anyway, and it's a quick project. In the next few videos, I want to cover some miscellaneous topics. There's still some things that I haven't gotten around to teaching through shading 1 and 2, and so I just want to show you a few miscellaneous things, and then we'll say some concluding thoughts and wrap up the whole series.